She thought she married the perfect man, a billionaire CEO with political ambitions. But when three of his ex-girlfriends mysteriously turned up dead and his new mistress began falling sick, one woman realized the truth. Her life, her baby, and her entire future were part of a deadly game. What happened next shocked the world, and the ending will leave you speechless. Stay with me until the very last second, because every twist is bigger than the last. And if you love stories of betrayal, revenge, and unbelievable comebacks, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment, share this with a friend, and subscribe for more incredible dramas. Just like this, the delivery room lights blazed overhead as Victoria Sterling gripped her phone with trembling fingers. Through the haze of contractions, she whispered four words that would end her husband's life as he knew it. Execute Phase 3, now. 6 months earlier, Victoria Sterling had stood in her pristine kitchen, watching her 17-year-old daughter Riley scroll through TikTok with the intensity of a detective examining evidence. The morning sun caught the diamond tennis bracelet on Victoria's wrist, a gift from Marcus for their second anniversary. Every diamond was a lie. "Mom, you need to see this," Riley said, her voice carefully neutral. She turned the phone screen toward Victoria. On the screen, Isabella Montenegro, 28, stunning, and the founder of a biotech startup, was laughing in what looked like the cabin of a private jet. The Hermes scarf draped over the seat was unmistakable. It was Marcus's jet, the same jet he'd supposedly taken to Seattle for an emergency board meeting. Victoria felt the familiar cold calculations settle over her features. 5 months pregnant, she placed a protective hand over her belly and arranged her face into the perfect mask of wounded shock. After 3 years of marriage to Marcus Sterling, she'd learned to play every role required. The devoted wife, the grateful stepmother, the former prosecutor who'd given up everything for love. All of it was a lie, of course, but Marcus didn't know that. "There must be an explanation," Victoria said, letting her voice crack just slightly. Riley's hidden cameras, installed throughout the house under the guise of a school project about home automation, would capture everything. When Marcus walked through the door that evening, Victoria was ready. She'd practiced in the mirror, ensuring her tears would fall at precisely the right moment. "How was Seattle?" she asked, serving him his favorite whiskey. "Two fingers, no ice, just how he liked it." "Productive," Marcus replied, loosening his tie. At 42, he still looked like the tech magazine covers loved to feature him on. Square jaw, piercing blue eyes, the kind of smile that had convinced investors to pour billions into Sterling Dynamics. The board approved the expansion. Victoria pulled up the TikTok video on her iPad. "Then who is she?" The transformation was instant and masterful. Marcus's face cycled through surprise, confusion, then settled on concerned sympathy. He crossed to Victoria in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands. "Victoria, sweetheart, you're being paranoid. Isabella is a colleague. She was on the same flight. Commercial, not private. This pregnancy is making you see things that aren't there." He was good. 3 years of watching him manipulate investors, destroy competitors, and gaslight his way through scandals had shown Victoria exactly how good. But she was better. "You're right," she whispered, leaning into his touch. "I'm sorry, these hormones." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Why don't you rest? I'll have Maria bring you some tea." As he walked toward his study, Victoria caught Riley's eye. Her daughter gave an almost imperceptible nod. The cameras had captured everything, including the micro-expression of satisfaction that had flickered across Marcus's face when Victoria backed down. Later that night, as Marcus slept beside her, Victoria stared at the ceiling and thought about the 3 women who'd come before her. Lauren Mitchell, suicide by overdose. Sarah Williams, car accident on a clear day with no other vehicles involved. Jennifer Brooks, drowning in her pool despite being a competitive swimmer. Each woman had dated Marcus Sterling. Each had tried to leave him. Each was dead within 6 months of the breakup. The FBI had approached Victoria 2 years ago when she was still a federal prosecutor. They needed someone Marcus would never suspect, someone with a daughter he could use as leverage, making her seem vulnerable, someone who could play the long game. Victoria had said yes before they'd finished asking. Now, 5 months into a pregnancy that Marcus believed was his, she was exactly where she needed to be, trapped in a marriage to a monster, with nowhere to run, Or so he thought. The next morning, Victoria made her first calculated mistake. She called a divorce lawyer. James Mitchell's law office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown high-rise. Victoria had chosen him carefully. Marcus's golf buddy, someone who'd immediately report back to her husband. She needed Marcus to know she was trying to leave. It would trigger his next move in a pattern he'd followed 3 times before. "Mrs. Sterling, I'm surprised to see you here," Mitchell said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He was already texting under his desk, probably alerting Marcus. "I need to know my options," Victoria said, placing a protective hand on her belly. "The prenup is ironclad," Mitchell interrupted. "You signed away significant rights." Marcus was very thorough. Victoria let tears well up. "There must be something. The baby. The child will be well provided for, but custody, that would be a battle. Marcus has resources. The court tends to favor stability." By the time Victoria left Mitchell's office, she knew Marcus would be waiting. She took the long way home, stopping at a cafe where David Reynolds just happened to be having coffee. "He knows," David said quietly, not looking up from his laptop. "Good," Victoria replied, ordering a decaf latte she wouldn't drink. "How's our friend in the psychiatric department?" "Dr. Harrison is ready. 3 months of backdated session notes, all documenting your declining mental state. Marcus's payment cleared yesterday." Victoria smiled into her coffee cup. "And Riley?" "Posted a video about feeling scared of her stepfather, deleted it after 30 seconds, but Marcus's social media monitoring caught it. He thinks she's on his side now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. 3 years of partnership, David, posing as her former law colleague, actually her FBI handler, had taught them to communicate in glances and gestures. "The escalation will be tonight," Victoria said finally. "He'll lock me out, make sure the surveillance van is ready." She was right. When Victoria arrived home, her keycard wouldn't work. The digital locks had been changed. She stood in the Seattle rain, 5 months pregnant, designer dress clinging to her body, and pounded on the door of her own home. "Marcus!" she called out, knowing the neighbors would hear. Mrs. Patterson next door was already peering through her curtains. "Please, it's raining." Riley opened the door eventually, playing her part perfectly. "Mom, Dad says you need help. He's worried about you." "Worried?" Victoria let her voice rise. "He locked me out." "You threatened Isabella," Riley said loudly. "I heard the recording." This was the moment. Victoria knew Marcus was recording from inside, building his case. She let herself sob, messily and desperately, before turning and stumbling back to her car. The cameras, FBI surveillance disguised as a news van, captured every second. She drove to the Fairmont Hotel downtown, where a room had been reserved under her maiden name. The desk clerk, another FBI asset, made sure to look concerned as he checked her in. "Are you all right, ma'am? Should I call someone?" "No," Victoria whispered. "I just need to rest." In the room, she pulled out the burner phone David had given her. One text. Phase 1 complete. Marcus would let her stew for exactly 48 hours. It was his pattern: isolate, then approach with false concern. During those 2 days, Victoria played her part perfectly. She ordered room service, but barely ate. She called Riley 17 times, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. She even made an appointment with a new divorce lawyer, knowing Marcus would have that one in his pocket too. On the 3rd day, Marcus appeared in the hotel lobby. "Victoria," he said, loud enough for witnesses to hear, "I'm worried about you. The baby, our baby needs its mother to be well." She looked up at him with perfectly crafted hope. "You came." "Of course I came. But darling, you need help. The things you said about Isabella. Dr. Harrison thinks it might be pregnancy-induced psychosis." There it was, the first mention of the diagnosis that would destroy her credibility. Victoria let him fold her into his arms, knowing that 3 hidden cameras were capturing the moment from different angles. "I don't remember saying those things," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. That's why we need to get you help." As Marcus led her back to the car, his hand possessively on her lower back, Victoria caught a glimpse of Isabella Montgomery walking past. The younger woman was wearing Victoria's grandmother's necklace, or what looked like it. The real one was in FBI custody, but Marcus didn't know that. The message was clear. Victoria was being replaced. In the car, Marcus played the recording. Victoria's voice, threatening to kill Isabella if she didn't stay away from her husband. The deep fake was flawless. It would fool any expert who hadn't been specifically looking for manipulation. I didn't say that, Victoria protested weakly. The court thinks you did, Marcus replied. The restraining order was approved this morning. You can't go within 500 feet of Isabella. Victoria stared out the window, counting the seconds until they'd reached the house. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The psychiatric hold came 2 weeks later, orchestrated with the precision of a Swiss watch. Victoria had gone to pick up Riley from school, a clear violation of the custody arrangement Marcus had somehow fast-tracked through family court. She knew the school security cameras would capture everything, knew that 3 parents in the pickup line were live streaming, knew that Marcus had tipped off his media connections. "Ma'am, you need to leave," the security guard said, his hand hovering near his radio. "Mr. Sterling has provided documentation." "She's my daughter!" Victoria's voice cracked perfectly, loud enough for every phone camera to catch. "I have the right to see my daughter." The police arrived in 4 minutes. Victoria had timed it during her practice runs. Officer Martinez, who had no idea he was part of an FBI operation, approached with genuine concern. "Ma'am, I need you to step back from the vehicle." Victoria clutched her belly, letting her breathing become erratic. "Please, I just want to see Riley. She needs to know I'm okay." That's when Patricia Harrison arrived, because of course Marcus had his psychiatric expert on speed dial. She wore a conservative suit and an expression of professional sympathy that would play perfectly on the evening news. "Victoria, I'm here to help," Dr. Harrison said smoothly. "Marcus is worried about you. We all are." "I don't need help," Victoria protested, but she let her voice waver, let her hands shake. The performance had to be perfect, unstable enough to justify the hold, but not so extreme that anyone would question why she'd been left alone until now. Riley emerged from the school building then, her face a masterpiece of teenaged anguish. "Mom, please, you're scaring everyone." The words were perfectly delivered, but Victoria caught the micro-expression, a flash of apology in her daughter's eyes. Riley was playing her part flawlessly, the FBI training hidden beneath layers of teenage emotion. "Riley, baby, I'm not sick," Victoria pleaded. "Your stepfather is—" "Paranoid delusions," Dr. Harrison murmured to Officer Martinez loud enough for the recording phones. "Classic presentation. We need to get her evaluated for the safety of the unborn child." The hashtag crazy prego wife was trending before the ambulance doors closed. The psychiatric ward at Harborview Medical Center was exactly as depressing as Victoria had expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial disinfectant failing to mask something worse. She was placed in a private room, Marcus's money at work, with a window facing the parking lot. For 12 hours, Victoria played the part of a woman on the edge. She paced. She cried. She demanded to speak to lawyers who never came. And then, exactly as scheduled, she started bleeding. "Help!" She pounded on the door. "Something's wrong with my baby." The nurse who responded, Nurse Catherine, according to her tag, barely glanced at her. "Mrs. Sterling, emotional distress can manifest as physical symptoms." "I'm bleeding." Victoria showed her the blood, real blood, from a small cut she'd made on her thigh where the hospital gown would hide it. "Please." "I'll note it in your chart," Nurse Catherine said, already backing toward the door. It took 3 more hours before a doctor arrived. 3 hours of Victoria curled on the narrow bed, whimpering into the surveillance cameras she knew were there. Dr. Morrison, not part of the operation, just a tired resident at the end of a 36-hour shift, finally ordered an ultrasound. "The baby's fine," he announced, gel still cold on Victoria's belly. "But your blood pressure is concerning. Have you been taking your prenatal vitamins?" Victoria nodded, thinking of the special vitamins Marcus had been so insistent about. The ones from Isabella's company, marketed as a proprietary blend for older mothers. The ones the FBI lab had confirmed contained trace amounts of mercury, not enough to kill, just enough to cause symptoms that looked like mental deterioration. "I take them every day," she said truthfully. Marcus arrived that evening with Isabella in tow, a calculated cruelty that would have broken a real victim. Isabella wore not just the grandmother's necklace, but also Victoria's favorite Cartier watch, the one Marcus had given her when they got engaged. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked, his voice dripping with false concern. Victoria let herself shrink into the hospital bed. "The baby is perfect," Marcus interrupted, "which is why I've filed for emergency custody once it's born. You're clearly not capable of providing a stable environment." Isabella placed a possessive hand on Marcus's arm. "We just want what's best for the child." The "we" was deliberate, surgical. Victoria felt the rage rise, not acted but real, and channeled it into tears. "You're replacing me." "No one's replacing anyone," Marcus lied smoothly. "Isabella is just helping during this difficult time." That night after they left, Victoria used the burner phone David had hidden in her toiletry bag. One message to Riley, tomorrow. The next morning, Riley Matthews attempted suicide on Instagram Live. Riley had chosen her method carefully. Sleeping pills, but not really. Sugar pills that looked identical, provided by the FBI. The timing was crucial. 7 p.m. Eastern, peak social media engagement, when her 2 million followers would be scrolling. Victoria watched from her psychiatric hold as the story exploded across social media. The video, Riley sobbing about her mother being torn away from Yene, about the pressure from her stepfather, about feeling like she had no one, was perfectly crafted teenage desperation. "I just want my mom back," Riley had sobbed to the camera. "But he says she's crazy. He says she's dangerous. Maybe if I'm gone, they'll both be free." The fake pills went down with orange juice, vitamin C to help sell the performance when she'd vomit them up later. Riley collapsed with theatrical precision just as concerned viewers started calling 911. The FBI ambulance arrived first, of course. They'd been waiting 2 blocks away. Victoria found out when Dr. Harrison burst into her room, face pale with genuine shock. Marcus hadn't told her about this part. It wasn't in the script he'd written. "Your daughter. There's been an incident." Victoria's scream was real. Even knowing it was fake, even knowing Riley was safe, the maternal terror was authentic. "What did you do to her?" She took pills," Dr. Harrison stammered. "On social media, Marcus is with her now." "Let me go to her." Victoria struggled against the restraints they'd added after her violent outburst that morning. An outburst that consisted of throwing a plastic water pitcher at the wall. "She needs me. You're in no condition." "She tried to kill herself because of what you're doing to me." Victoria's voice broke. "My baby tried to die." The guilt that flashed across Dr. Harrison's face was genuine. For the first time, the psychiatrist seemed to realize she might be part of something monstrous. Victoria was allowed a supervised video call. Riley, pale and convincing in her hospital bed, played her part perfectly. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I just couldn't watch him destroy you anymore." "Baby, no," Victoria sobbed. "You have to be strong. For both of us." Marcus stood in the background of the call, his face a mask of concern for the cameras. But Victoria caught the rage in his eyes. Riley's suicide attempt had shifted public opinion. Crazy Prego wife was being replaced by Save Riley's mom. The narrative was slipping from his control. That night, Marcus made his first real mistake. He came to Victoria's room alone after visiting hours, using his influence to bypass security. The FBI cameras hidden in the air vent captured everything. "That little stunt with Riley," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. "Did you coach her?" Victoria let herself look confused, drugged. They'd given her a mild sedative earlier. "What stunt?" "Don't play dumb." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, his hand resting on her pregnant belly, a gesture that would look tender from outside but felt like a threat. "Though I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Mental illness runs in families." "Riley's not mentally ill." "No?" Marcus's thumb pressed slightly into her stomach. "The suicide attempt suggests otherwise. Though I suppose it could be the trauma of watching her mother fall apart. First your pregnancy hormones, then the paranoid delusions, now this psychiatric hold. It must be so hard for a teenage girl." Victoria felt the baby kick against Marcus's hand, and his smile turned predatory. "You know what's funny?" he continued. "Your first husband died when Riley was what, 2? Car accident, wasn't it? You know it was. Brake failure on a clear day. So tragic. His hand moved in slow circles on her belly. You'd think that would make you more careful, more protective of the family you have left. There it was, the threat, delivered with a smile. What are you saying? Victoria whispered. I'm saying that Riley is fragile right now. Suicide attempts can be recurring, especially when someone is under stress. Marcus stood straightening his Italian suit. But don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Isabella's wonderful with teenagers. She'll make a perfect stepmother. After he left, Victoria curled into herself and cried, real tears this time. Not for herself, but for Lauren Mitchell, Sarah Williams, and Jennifer Brooks. The three women who hadn't had the FBI watching their backs, who hadn't known the monster they were dating until it was too late. David visited the next morning, playing the role of concerned friend and former colleague. The partners at the firm are worried about you, he said loudly for the benefit of Dr. Harrison, who was hovering nearby. Then quietly, Riley's performance was perfect. Public opinion is shifting. He threatened her, Victoria whispered back. We caught it all on tape, but we need more. We need him to confess to the others. Victoria nodded slightly. How's the investigation into Isabella's company? Interesting findings. She's been developing fertility supplements marketed to older mothers. Sound familiar? The prenatal vitamins. Victoria's hand went to her stomach. The baby will be fine. The mercury levels aren't high enough to cause permanent damage, but they're traceable. It's evidence. Dr. Harrison approached then, clipboard in hand. Mr. Reynolds, I'm afraid visiting time is over. David squeezed Victoria's hand. Hang in there, the cavalry's coming. As he left, Victoria noticed Dr. Harrison watching her with something new in her eyes. Not sympathy, not yet, but doubt. The first crack in Marcus's carefully constructed narrative. 3 days into the psychiatric hold, Victoria discovered she wasn't the only one playing a long game. Isabella Montenegro arrived during evening visiting hours alone. She wore designer clothes that couldn't quite hide the weight loss, the slight tremor in her hands, the way she kept touching her hair, thinner than it had been in the TikTok video. He's not here, Isabella said, closing the door behind her. Marcus, he thinks I'm at an investor meeting. Victoria stayed silent, watching. After 3 years of undercover work, she could read people like sheet music, and Isabella was playing a tune she recognized. Fear masquerading as confidence. You probably hate me, Isabella continued, sitting in the visitor's chair. The other woman. The cliché. I don't hate you, Victoria said truthfully. I pity you. Isabella's laugh was bitter. Right, because I'm sleeping with your husband. No, because in 6 months, you'll be dead. The words hung in the air between them. Isabella's hand went to her thinning hair again, an unconscious gesture. What are you talking about? Victoria shifted in the hospital bed, letting the handcuffs they'd added after her violent episode clink against the rail. Did Marcus ever mention his exes? Lauren, Sarah, Jennifer? He said they were unstable, that Sarah stalked him, and Jennifer tried to blackmail him. They're dead. Victoria kept her voice flat, factual. Lauren overdosed 8 months after they broke up. Sarah's brakes failed on a clear day. Jennifer drowned in her pool even though she swam competitively in college. Isabella stood abruptly. You're crazy. That's why you're here. Check the mercury levels in your blood, Victoria said quietly. The supplements he has you taking, the ones from your own company, the proprietary blend for fertility. You're not trying to get pregnant, are you? Isabella's face went pale. How did you? Because he had me taking them too. Special vitamins for the baby, only they're not vitamins. Victoria lifted her hospital gown slightly, showing the bruises where they'd drawn blood repeatedly. Mercury poisoning mimics mental illness, paranoia, mood swings, tremors, hair loss. Isabella's hand went to her hair again, and this time she pulled away with several strands twisted around her fingers. No, she whispered. He's been poisoning both of us, Victoria continued. You're the cover story. The younger woman he'll tragically lose to illness, making him a sympathetic widower. Perfect for a Senate run. You're lying. But Isabella was already pulling out her phone, Googling symptoms. Victoria watched her read, watched the horror dawn on her face. There's only one way out, Victoria said, and it's not what you think. Before Isabella could respond, the door burst open. Marcus stood there, his face a mask of fury barely contained. Isabella, I thought you were at the Hilton. I wanted to talk to her, Isabella stammered, to apologize. Marcus's smile was razor sharp. How thoughtful, but visiting hours are over. He gripped Isabella's arm hard enough to leave marks. Victoria saw her wince. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, I think Ms. Montenegro should stay. Agent Thompson walked in, the corrupt FBI agent from Marcus's payroll, or so Marcus believed. In reality, Thompson was deep undercover, his apparent corruption a carefully crafted legend. What are you doing here? Marcus demanded. My job, Thompson replied. There's been a development in your wife's case. The blood work shows some irregularities. Marcus's grip on Isabella tightened. What kind of irregularities? Heavy metals, mercury specifically, enough to cause psychological symptoms. Thompson's expression was unreadable. We're investigating the source. That's impossible, Marcus said, but Victoria caught the flicker of calculation in his eyes. Thompson pulled out a warrant. We have authorization to search your home, Mr. Sterling, and to test any supplements or medications. The trap was closing, but Marcus didn't know it yet. He thought Thompson was warning him, giving him time to dispose of evidence. This is harassment, Marcus said smoothly. My wife is mentally ill. She probably took something herself, trying to make me look bad. Maybe, Thompson agreed. Or maybe someone's been poisoning her. Either way, we need to investigate. After they left, Victoria lay back and smiled. Marcus would spend tonight destroying evidence, not knowing the FBI already had samples of everything. Every move he made now would be cataloged, recorded, added to the case file. Her phone, the hidden one, buzzed with a text from Riley. Dad's freaking out, burning papers in the fireplace. Another from David. Isabella just checked into urgent care. She's asking for a full toxicology screen. The pieces were moving into place. That night, Victoria dreamed of Lauren Mitchell. In the dream, Lauren was swimming, but the pool water turned to mercury, silver, and toxic, pulling her down. She woke gasping, her hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. Just a little longer, she whispered to her unborn child. Mommy's almost done playing pretend. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Sterling Dynamics' quarterly investor review. Mandatory attendance for the CEO. Impossible to reschedule. It was the opportunity Victoria had been waiting for. She'd been released from psychiatric hold that morning, a calculated move by Marcus to make himself look magnanimous. The devoted husband, welcoming his troubled wife home despite everything. The cameras outside their Bellevue mansion caught him helping her from the car, his hand protective on her back. Take your vitamins, he said once they were inside, handing her the familiar bottle. You missed several doses in the hospital. Victoria obediently swallowed 2 pills, then excused herself to the bathroom where she immediately made herself throw them up, a skill she'd perfected over months of practice. The mercury levels in her blood needed to stay consistent but not fatal. Riley was in her room, supposedly grounded but actually coordinating with the FBI team. She'd installed Tracker Pro on Marcus's phone during a tearful reconciliation hug, giving them real-time access to his communications. At 2 p.m., Marcus left for the office. At 2:15, Victoria called David. He's gone. How's Isabella? In the hospital, David reported. Mercury levels through the roof. She's cooperating fully. Turns out she kept samples of every batch of supplements. Entrepreneurs have it. The FBI lab is having a field day. And the other thing? Your father-in-law just landed at SeaTac. His immunity deal is signed and sealed. Marcus doesn't know his biggest supporter flipped 3 months ago. Victoria felt a grim satisfaction. Senator Jack Sterling had built his fortune on dirty deals and dead bodies, but even he drew the line at his son murdering women for sport. At 3 p.m., Victoria walked into the Sterling Dynamics boardroom. The 12 board members looked up in surprise. Marcus, mid-PowerPoint, froze with his laser pointer still raised. Victoria, he said, voice dangerously calm. You should be resting. I have something the board needs to see, Victoria said, pulling out a flash drive, about the company's finances. Security, Marcus called, but Victoria was already at the presentation computer, plugging in the drive. the screen filled with bank records. Transfers from Sterling Dynamics to a shell company in the Caymans, from there to another in Switzerland, and finally to Isabella's startup, nearly $50 million in illegally diverted funds. "What is this?" Board Chairman Robert Hayes demanded. "Embezzlement," Victoria said simply. "My husband has been funding his mistress's company with your money." Marcus laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "She's having another episode. Someone call Dr. Harrison." "These are your signatures," Victoria continued, clicking through documents. "Your authorization codes, all tracked back to your personal laptop." "She's sick," Marcus insisted, moving toward her. "The mercury poisoning has affected her mind." Victoria smiled. "Oh yes, let's talk about the mercury poisoning." She clicked again. Medical records filled the screen, not just hers, but Isabella's. And then, devastating in their simplicity, 3 death certificates. Lauren Mitchell, Sarah Williams, Jennifer Brooks. 3 women, Victoria said. All dated my husband. All died within months of trying to leave him. The board members were shifting uncomfortably now. Security had arrived but seemed uncertain whether to remove Victoria or protect her. "This is insane," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its commanding tone. That's when Agent Thompson walked in, followed by 6 other FBI agents. "Marcus Sterling, you're under arrest for embezzlement, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder." Marcus's face cycled through emotions, shock, rage, calculation, before settling on cold arrogance. "You have no proof." "Actually," Thompson said, "we have everything. Your father has been very cooperative." The mention of his father finally cracked Marcus's composure. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Senator Jack Sterling entered the boardroom looking every one of his 68 years. "Hello, son." "Dad?" Marcus's voice actually cracked. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago," the senator replied, "stopping you." Victoria watched as the man who'd terrorized her for 3 years, who'd killed 3 women before her, was handcuffed by federal agents. But Marcus had one more card to play. "She's not even pregnant with my child," he announced to the room. "Tell them, Victoria. Tell them about the IVF, the frozen sperm from your dead husband." The board members gasped. Victoria felt the moment balance on a knife's edge. "You're right," she said clearly. "I would never carry your child. I've been working with the FBI since before we met. Every moment of our marriage has been a lie." Marcus lunged at her then, cuffs and all. The agents restrained him, but not before he screamed, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you like I killed the others!" There it was. Confession, on camera, in front of 12 witnesses. As they dragged him out, Marcus locked eyes with Victoria one last time. "This isn't over." Victoria placed a protective hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "Yes, Marcus, it is." The boardroom erupted in chaos, but Victoria walked out calmly. In the hallway, Riley was waiting with David. "You did it, Mom," Riley said, pulling her into a hug. "We did it," Victoria corrected, then winced. "What's wrong?" David asked, immediately concerned. Victoria looked down. Her water had broken. "The baby," she said. "The stress. It's coming early." The delivery room at Northwest Medical Center was nothing like Victoria had imagined. Instead of Marcus pacing outside, there were FBI agents. Instead of happy anticipation, there was the exhaustion of a 3-year operation coming to its climax. 5 weeks early, Dr. Martinez said, checking the monitors, but the baby's vitals are strong. Victoria gripped Riley's hand as another contraction hit. Her daughter had refused to leave her side, even when the medical staff suggested she might want to wait outside. "I'm not going anywhere," Riley had said firmly. "We're family, real family." David stood by the door, phone in hand, coordinating with the FBI team. "Marcus made bail," he reported quietly. $2 million, posted by a shell company we haven't traced yet. "He has resources we don't know about," Victoria gasped between contractions. "Hidden accounts. He was always paranoid." "We have agents on him 24/7, David assured her. "He can't run." But Victoria knew Marcus better than that. He wasn't planning to run. He was planning revenge. The labor lasted 12 hours. 12 hours during which Victoria learned things that made her blood run cold despite the epidural. Isabella, sedated in another wing of the same hospital, had revealed more about the supplement scheme. The mercury wasn't the only toxin. There were other compounds designed to cross the placental barrier, designed to cause developmental delays, autism spectrum disorders, a lifetime of challenges that would destroy Victoria's credibility and trap her as a caregiver forever. But the baby, Victoria had gasped when David told her, is the baby? We don't know yet, Dr. Martinez said honestly. We'll run tests as soon as the child is born. Hour 6 brought a visitor. Senator Sterling, looking haggard, stood in the doorway with flowers. I know you don't want to see me, he began. You're right, Victoria said coldly, but I need you to know something. Marcus, he wasn't always like this. When his mother died, something broke in him. I thought I could fix it. I covered for him, enabled him. I'm responsible for those 3 women as much as he is. Your guilt isn't my concern, Victoria said, then cried out as another contraction hit. The senator set down the flowers. There's something else. Marcus has a backup plan. He always does. There's a safe in his office. We searched everything, David interrupted, not the one behind the Monet. The real safe is in the floor underneath. The painting safe is a decoy. The senator pulled out a key. This opens it. Whatever's in there, he was saving it for an emergency. He left the key on the bedside table and walked out. Hour 8 brought terror. The baby's heart rate dropped suddenly. Nurses flooded the room. We need to do an emergency C-section, Dr. Martinez announced. As they prepared to wheel her to surgery, Victoria's burner phone rang. Riley answered it. Mom, she said, face pale. Marcus is gone. He cut off his ankle monitor and disappeared. Victoria felt her heart rate spike, causing alarms to beep. When? 20 minutes ago. The agents lost him in Pike Place Market. There was no time to respond. The anesthesia mask covered her face and the world went dark. Victoria woke to crying, not her own, a baby's cry, healthy, angry, alive. It's a boy, Riley said, tears streaming down her face. Mom, he's perfect. The baby was small, 5 pounds and 2 ounces, but his lungs were strong. His eyes, when he finally opened them, were clear and bright. The initial test showed no signs of mercury poisoning, no developmental concerns. A miracle, Dr. Martinez said, given what you've been through. Victoria held her son, James, after her first husband, and felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. Then David walked in, face grim. We opened the safe, he said. You need to see this. He handed her a tablet. On the screen were documents, contracts, photographs, correspondence, but not what she expected. These are adoption papers, Victoria said, confused. For Riley. David nodded. Keep reading. The truth was worse than any poison. Marcus hadn't just been planning to take the baby. He'd been planning to take Riley too. The documents revealed a 2-year paper trail, fake psychiatric evaluations of Victoria, manufactured evidence of even staged photographs made to look like Victoria had hurt her own daughter. He was going to have you declared unfit, David explained. Take both children, raise them with Isabella. But Isabella was being poisoned too, Riley protested. She was disposable, David said. Look at the last document. A life insurance policy. Isabella Montenegro, with Marcus Sterling as the sole beneficiary. $20 million. He was going to kill her too, Victoria whispered. Make himself the tragic widower with 2 children to raise. The perfect Senate candidate, David agreed. A family man who overcame personal tragedy. Victoria looked at baby James, then at Riley, then at David. Where is he? We don't know, but there's more. The FBI found something else in that safe. A laptop with encrypted files. Our tech team is working on it, but I can crack it, Riley interrupted. Dad, Marcus, he taught me his system. He thought he was being clever, bonding with me over coding. Within an hour, Riley had the files open. They were worse than anyone imagined. Videos, not just of Victoria, but of all Marcus's victims. Hidden camera footage of Lauren, Sarah, Jennifer in their final days. Marcus had recorded everything, their fear, their pleas, their deaths. He kept trophies, Victoria said, feeling sick. Evidence, David corrected. Ironclad evidence. With this, he'll never see daylight again. But first, they had to find him. 3 months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and FBI debriefings. James grew stronger every day. hitting his developmental milestones early despite his premature birth. Victoria had moved into a safe house in Kirkland, with Riley homeschooling to stay close. The hunt for Marcus Sterling had become national news. His face was on every screen, every newspaper, every social media feed, but he'd vanished like smoke. Isabella, recovering in witness protection, had provided crucial intelligence. Marcus had cryptocurrency accounts they hadn't known about, hidden under false identities, nearly $100 million, untouchable by federal seizure. He could be anywhere, David admitted during one of their daily briefings. New face, new name, new life. But Victoria knew better. Marcus wouldn't run. His ego wouldn't let him. He'd want to win, to prove he was smarter than everyone else. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Riley had been monitoring the dark web, using skills she'd learned from Marcus himself. She found something on a hidden forum, someone selling mercury compounds, the exact formulation used in Isabella's supplements. "It's him," she insisted. "Look at the writing style, the way he uses semicolons. It's identical to his emails." The FBI's cyber unit traced the post to a server in Vancouver. Close enough to watch, far enough to feel safe. Victoria made the decision that would define the rest of her life. "I'm going to draw him out," she announced. "Absolutely not," David said immediately. "You have a baby to think about." "I am thinking about him, and Riley, and every other woman Marcus might target." Victoria pulled up her phone. "I'm going to do an interview, prime time, tell the whole story." The interview was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Anderson Cooper, live television, no holds barred. Victoria knew Marcus would be watching. His narcissism wouldn't let him miss it. She dressed carefully, the same outfit she'd worn to their anniversary dinner a year ago. The jewelry he'd given her, except for the pieces in evidence. She wanted him to see what he'd lost. 3 years ago, she told Anderson, the FBI approached me about an undercover operation, a serial killer who targeted women who tried to leave him. She told it all, the murders disguised as accidents, the poison, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of her credibility. And finally, the pregnancy, not Marcus's child, but her deceased husband's, through IVF she'd undergone before the operation began. "You were never really married to him?" Anderson asked. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, I was acting every second of every day. That must have been incredibly difficult." Victoria looked directly at the camera. "Not as difficult as what Lauren, Sarah, and Jennifer went through. They didn't have the FBI protecting them. They died alone and afraid. Do you have a message for Marcus Sterling, if he's watching?" Victoria smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. "I do. You lost, Marcus, not because you weren't smart enough, but because you underestimated every woman you ever met. Isabella survived. Riley outsmarted you, and I was never yours to break." Her phone buzzed 30 seconds after the interview ended. Unknown number. One word, liar. They traced it to a burner phone purchased in Seattle. The net was closing. 3 days later, Victoria got another message. "JFK, Terminal 4, tomorrow. Come alone or Riley pays." It was a trap, obviously, but it was also exactly what they'd been waiting for. "He doesn't know we turned his father," David said, reviewing the plan for the 100th time. "He thinks he still has that alliance." "And he doesn't know about the tracker," Riley added. She'd sewn a GPS chip into the lining of Victoria's purse, the same designer bag Marcus had given her for her birthday. The plan was simple. Victoria would go to JFK, as instructed. FBI agents would be positioned throughout the terminal. The moment Marcus showed himself, they'd take him down. But Victoria knew Marcus. He always had a backup plan. The flight to New York was the longest of her life. James stayed with Riley in a full protective detail in Seattle. Every maternal instinct screamed at her not to leave her baby, but she knew this was the only way to keep him safe permanently. JFK Terminal 4 was crowded with holiday travelers. Victoria sat at the gate Marcus had specified, hyper-aware of every face, every movement. Then she saw him. Not Marcus. Isabella. She was supposed to be in witness protection in Montana. Instead, she was walking toward Victoria in designer clothes and sunglasses, very much not hiding. "Hello, Victoria," Isabella said, sitting down beside her. Victoria's blood ran cold. "You're working with him." Isabella laughed. "Working with him? No, I'm finishing what you started. She pulled out a phone, showed Victoria the screen. Security footage of Riley at the safe house. A red laser dot on her forehead. Marcus taught me about backup plans, Isabella said. He's watching through my phone. One word from him and your daughter dies. And the FBI doesn't know about the sniper. Marcus has resources you never found. Isabella leaned closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk to the private aviation terminal. You're going to get on a plane, and you're going to disappear. He'll kill me. Eventually, but not quickly. He has plans for you. Isabella stood. You have 30 seconds to decide. Your life or your daughter's. Victoria stood slowly, her hand brushing her purse. The tracker Riley had installed would tell the FBI where she went, but would they be fast enough? As they walked through the terminal, Victoria caught the glimpses of FBI agents trying to follow discreetly. Isabella led her through a service door, down a maintenance corridor, emerging in a section of the airport Victoria didn't recognize. The private jet was waiting, engines running, and there, at the top of the boarding stairs, stood Marcus Sterling. He'd lost weight, grown a beard, but the eyes were the same, cold, calculating, victorious. Hello, wife, he said. The inside of the private jet was exactly what Victoria expected. Leather seats, champagne, cooling in silver buckets, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Marcus had always confused wealth with taste. Sit, he commanded, gesturing to a seat by the window. Victoria remained standing. Call off the sniper. Marcus smiled. What sniper? Isabella, what did you tell her? Isabella's laugh was bitter. Everything you told me to. The truth hit Victoria like ice water. You're not working with him. Oh, but she is, Marcus said, pouring himself champagne. She just doesn't know the whole plan yet. Isabella's confident expression faltered. What do you mean? You thought you were so clever, Marcus told her. Surviving the Mercury, testifying against me. But I knew you'd break. Weak people always do. I'm not weak. You came here, didn't you? One threatening message about your sister in Dallas, and you abandoned witness protection. Marcus sipped his champagne. There is no sniper on Riley, by the way. She's perfectly safe. But you, Isabella, you just committed federal crimes. Kidnapping, conspiracy. They'll arrest you the moment we land. Isabella went pale. You said we'd run away together? To Switzerland, where I have friends, where you'll tragically overdose on the same mercury you've been taking. Voluntarily this time, to frame Victoria. Victoria saw it all now. The final move in Marcus's game. Frame her for everything. Make Isabella the victim turned conspirator. Walk away clean. There's just one problem, Victoria said, pulling out her phone. I took your phone, Isabella protested. You took the decoy. Victoria held up the real one, Riley's gift, waterproof and unbreakable. Everything you both just said is being live-streamed to 5 million viewers. Marcus lunged for the phone, but Victoria had learned a thing or two about self-defense during her FBI training. She dodged, using his momentum to send him crashing into the champagne bucket. It's over, Marcus. The FBI is already here. Impossible. This is a private airfield. The jet door opened. Not FBI agents. Senator Sterling stood there, flanked by federal marshals. Hello, son, he said quietly. Going somewhere? Marcus's face contorted with rage. You're supposed to be in federal custody. I was. I made a deal. Your location for my freedom. The senator looked older than his years. I've done terrible things, Marcus. Covered up your crimes, enabled your sickness, but I won't let you hurt another woman. You're my father, which is why I have to stop you. The live stream comments were pouring in. Victoria caught glimpses. OMG, is this real? Call the police. Girl, run. But she didn't run. Instead, she pulled out a small device from her purse, not a tracker, but a recorder. FBI grade, inadmissible in court, but perfect for this moment. Let me tell you a story, Marcus, she said, about a prosecutor who lost her husband in a suspicious car accident, who suspected murder but couldn't prove it, who was approached by the FBI 3 years later about a serial killer with the same MO. Marcus had gone very still. My first husband didn't die randomly, Victoria continued. You killed him because he was investigating Sterling Dynamics for fraud. The FBI figured it out last month. You can't prove your father kept records, Victoria said, of everything, including the mechanic you paid to cut those brake lines. Senator Sterling nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Victoria. I didn't know at the time, but I kept the receipts. Marcus never could resist bragging to me about his cleverness. Isabella had collapsed into a seat, sobbing. The federal marshals were moving in. But Marcus had one more card to play. He pulled out a small device, a dead man's switch. Insurance policy, he said. There are bombs in 3 Sterling Dynamics offices. I press this button, 300 innocent employees die. Let me go, or I become the worst mass murderer in Washington state history. The live stream chat exploded. The FBI agents froze. Even Senator Sterling looked shocked. But Victoria knew Marcus better than anyone. 3 years of studying him, living with him, pretending to love him. You're lying, she said simply. Want to bet 300 lives on that? Victoria stepped closer. You're a narcissist, Marcus, not a terrorist. Mass murder is messy, impersonal. You like your victims to know who's killing them. You like to watch. You don't know me. I know you completely. Another step. The device is fake, just like your love, your empathy, your entire life. She reached for the device. Marcus's finger hovered over the button. Go ahead, Victoria said. Press it. Their eyes locked. For a moment, the only sound was Isabella's sobbing and the low hum of the jet engines. Marcus pressed the button. Nothing happened. Victoria smiled. I told you, I know you. The federal marshals moved in then, wrestling Marcus to the ground. He screamed, not words, just pure rage, the sound of a predator finally caged. As they dragged him past, he managed to twist toward Victoria. This isn't over. Yes, she said quietly. It is. The live stream was still running. 5 million had become 8 million. Comments poured in too fast to read. But Victoria wasn't looking at the phone anymore. She was looking at Riley, who had just appeared in the doorway of the jet, holding baby James. How did you really think I'd let you face him alone? Riley said. The FBI brought us. We've been in the hangar the whole time. Victoria pulled them both into her arms, breathing in the scent of baby shampoo and teenage rebellion. Is it really over? Riley asked. Victoria looked at Marcus being loaded into a federal transport van, at Isabella being read her rights, at Senator Sterling signing his confession. The case is over, she said, but our lives, they're just beginning. 1 year later, the courtroom was packed for the sentencing. Media from around the world had come to witness the conclusion of United States versus Marcus Sterling, the trial that had exposed not just one serial killer, but an entire network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of government. Victoria sat in the prosecutor's section, no longer a witness, but an observer. James, now 18 months old, was with the nanny. Riley sat beside her, holding her hand. Marcus stood as the judge entered. He'd aged a decade in a year. The designer suits were gone, replaced by federal prison gray. But his eyes still held that cold arrogance. Mr. Sterling, Judge Patricia Nakamura began, you have been found guilty on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, conspiracy, embezzlement, fraud. The list goes on for pages. Marcus remained silent, his lawyer having advised him against speaking. In my 30 years on the bench, I have never encountered a defendant so utterly devoid of remorse. You targeted women who loved you, who trusted you. You murdered them for the crime of wanting to leave. The judge shuffled her papers. Victoria Sterling testified that you once told her that weak people always break. But Mr. Sterling, it wasn't your victims who broke. It was you. Your need for control, your pathological narcissism. These are the weaknesses that led you here. I hereby sentence you to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 230 years for the remaining charges. The courtroom erupted. Marcus turned to look at Victoria one last time. She expected rage, threats, something. Instead, he just looked empty, hollow, a man who had lost everything because he'd never truly had anything. As the bailiffs led him away, Victoria felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, just nothing. Marcus Sterling had occupied so much of her life, and now he was simply gone. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy was instant. Microphones shoved forward, questions shouted over each other. Victoria, how does it feel? Will you write a book? What's next for you? She'd prepared a statement, but standing there in the afternoon sun, she decided to speak from the heart instead. 3 women died because our system failed them, she said. Lauren Mitchell, Sarah Williams, and Jennifer Brooks deserve better. They deserve to be believed. They deserved protection. Today isn't about Marcus Sterling. It's about them and about the countless other victims who are still out there, still trapped, still afraid. I'm establishing the Lauren, Sarah, and Jennifer Foundation. We'll provide legal resources, safe houses, and investigative support for victims of intimate partner violence, because no one should have to wait for the FBI to save them. What about your own future? A reporter called out. Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given the media. I'm going to raise my children. I'm going to heal. And I'm going to make sure that what happened to those 3 women never happens again. 6 months later, the beach house in Malibu was nothing like the mansion in Bellevue. Smaller, simpler, with windows that actually opened and a kitchen meant for cooking, not showing off. Victoria stood on the deck, watching Riley teach James to build sandcastles. Her daughter, 18 now, headed to MIT in the fall, had become the big sister Victoria had always hoped she'd be. Knock, knock, a familiar voice said. David Reynolds stood in the doorway, holding a bottle of wine and a pizza. He'd retired from the FBI after the Sterling case, starting a private investigation firm specializing in domestic violence cases. You know you don't have to keep checking on us, Victoria said. I know, but someone has to make sure you're eating actual food and not just James's leftover goldfish crackers. They sat on the deck, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. It had taken Victoria months to stop looking over her shoulder, to stop flinching at unexpected sounds. The hypervigilance of 3 years undercover didn't fade easily. Isabella's doing better, David said carefully. The psychiatric facility says she might be ready for outpatient treatment soon. Victoria nodded. Isabella Montenegro had avoided prison. Barely. The jury had believed her testimony about Marcus's manipulation, the poisoning, the psychological torture. She'd been sentenced to psychiatric treatment instead of jail time. I hope she finds peace, Victoria said, and meant it. That's generous considering. We were both his victims. She just didn't have the FBI backing her up. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then David said, I have news. Senator Sterling died this morning. Victoria felt a complicated mix of emotions. Marcus's father had been a monster in his own way. No, but his cooperation had been crucial to the conviction. How? Heart attack, in his cell. David paused. He left something for you. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photo showed a young Marcus, maybe 5 years old, smiling genuinely at the camera, before whatever darkness lived in him had taken over. The letter was brief. Victoria, I failed my son, and he failed the world. But you stopped him. You saved others from suffering what those 3 women endured. I'm sorry for my part in it all. The photo is from before. I thought you should know he was human once. Jacko. Victoria stared at the photo of the smiling child who would become a monster. Then she walked inside and placed it in a drawer. Some things didn't deserve to be remembered. Victoria, Riley called from the beach. James just said, Mama. Victoria ran down to the sand, scooping up her son, who giggled and repeated, Mama, Mama, oh, mommy. That's right, baby, she said, holding him close. Mama's here. 5 years later, the Attorney General's office in Washington, D.C. was smaller than Victoria had expected. But then she'd learned that real power rarely needed ostentatious display. Congratulations, Madam Attorney General, her assistant said, bringing in a stack of briefings. Victoria Sterling, she'd kept the name as a reminder, had taken an unconventional path to this office. The Sterling case had made her a household name. The foundation had given her purpose. Law school, Again, because her previous credentials had been compromised by the undercover work, had given her the tools. And now, at 42, she was the youngest attorney general in U.S. history. Her first act had been to establish a task force on intimate partner violence. Her second was to review every suspicious death of a woman in the past 20 years where the partner had been cleared. Riley, now 23 and working for the FBI's cyber division, called her that evening. "Saw the news, Mom. Looking very official. How's Boston?" "Cold. James would hate it." James, now 6, was in first grade in D.C., charming his teachers and defending smaller kids from bullies with equal enthusiasm. "Any interesting cases?" Victoria asked. "Actually, yeah, there's this pattern we're seeing. Women dying in accidents, but their partners all have connections to—" "Riley," Victoria interrupted gently, "you know I can't hear about active investigations." "Right, sorry, forgot you're all official now." They chatted about safer topics: Riley's girlfriend, James's soccer team, the weather. Normal things, the kind of conversations that Victoria had never imagined having during those 3 dark years. After hanging up, Victoria walked to her window, looking out at the Washington Monument lit up against the night sky. On her desk was a framed photo, not of Marcus or anything from that life, but of Lauren Mitchell, Sarah Williams, and Jennifer Brooks. 3 women who should have lived. 3 women whose deaths had meaning now. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. For a moment, her heart stopped. Even after 5 years, even with Marcus in Supermax prison, that old fear could still surface. But the text was from Isabella. "Saw the news. Proud of you. Thank you for everything. I." Victoria deleted the message but kept the sentiment. They'd all survived, in their own ways. Even Isabella, broken but not destroyed, had found a path forward. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Ma'am, your 6:30 is here." Back to work. There were other victims to save, other predators to stop. Marcus Sterling had been just one monster in a world full of them. But Victoria had learned something important during those 3 years of pretending to be prey. Sometimes the best way to catch a predator was to make them think they were the one doing the hunting. She picked up the briefing on her desk. A new case, a new challenge, a new chance to save someone. Marcus was serving 3 life sentences. Victoria was serving justice. And somewhere, she hoped, Lauren and Sarah and Jennifer were finally at peace. 10 years after, the lecture hall at Georgetown Law was packed. Standing room only for the former Attorney General's guest lecture on undercover operations and legal ethics. Victoria, now 51, commanded the room with the same presence that had once fooled a killer into marrying her. "The law is not always about what's legal," she told the students. "Sometimes it's about what's right. Sometimes it's about what's necessary." A hand shot up. "But doesn't that justify vigilante justice?" "No," Victoria said firmly. "I worked within the system with full FBI support and oversight. The moment we step outside the law to enforce it, we become what we're fighting against." Another student asked, "Do you ever regret it? The 3 years undercover?" Victoria considered the question. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that 3 women had to die before someone stopped Marcus Sterling. But regret the operation itself? Never." "What happened to him?" someone called out. "Sterling." Victoria had gotten this question hundreds of times over the years. The answer was always the same. "He's in ADX Florence, solitary confinement. He'll die there alone, which is fitting for someone who isolated and killed the women who loved him." What she didn't tell them was that Marcus had tried to send her letters for the first 5 years. Proclamations of innocence, threats, promises of revenge, declarations of love, a new manipulation every few months. She'd never read any of them. The FBI intercepted them all, filed them as evidence of his continuing psychopathy. Then the letters had stopped. Word from the prison was that Marcus had gone silent. No more schemes, no more plans, just a man sitting in a concrete box, waiting to die. The lecture ended, and students crowded around with questions, but Victoria's attention was caught by a figure in the back of the hall. Riley, now 33 and heading the FBI's new domestic violence task force, stood with a young woman Victoria didn't recognize. After the students dispersed, Riley approached with her companion. "Mom, this is Special Agent Sarah Brooks. She's new to the task force." Victoria's breath caught. Sarah Brooks? The young woman nodded. Jennifer Brooks was my aunt. She died when I was 12. Your testimony at Sterling's trial, it gave our family closure. It's why I joined the FB. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, something that rarely happened anymore. Your aunt was brave, she said. She tried to leave him. That took incredible courage. She was, Sarah agreed, and now I catch the Marcus Sterlings of the world, before they can kill anyone. As they talked, Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from James, now 16 and as brilliant as his sister. Mom got into MIT early admission. Also, can I borrow the car? Some things never changed. That evening, Victoria stood in her Arlington home, looking at the wall of photos in her study. Not victims this time, but victories. Women who'd been saved by the foundation. Children who'd grown up free from abuse because their mothers had gotten help in time. Marcus Sterling had thought he was playing chess, moving pieces on a board only he could see. But he'd never understood the most important rule of the game. The queen was always the most powerful piece. And sometimes to win, you had to let the king think he was in control right until the moment you said checkmate. Victoria turned off the lights and headed upstairs. Tomorrow there would be new cases, new challenges, new battles to fight. But tonight she would sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere in Colorado, Marcus Sterling stared at the same concrete walls he'd see for the rest of his life. She'd played the perfect victim, and she'd won.